I want to give thanks to Steve, who's been here for all these 12 weeks and done a yeoman job in recording these things. When Mary Ann asked me to do this, I didn't want to do it. You know, my experience with the steps is, you know, perhaps 2 or 3 minute blurb at a step meeting or leading a step meeting and talking on it for 5 or 10 minutes. And she said, no, you can do it, and she was very supportive and assertive, I might add. So I consented in quotes to do it, and I must tell you, it's really been remarkable for me, you know. I have learned more about these steps in the past 12 weeks than probably anyone else in this room. I want to make sure you understand that, you know. I've been around 25 years plus when I started this thing, and I thought I knew the steps, but when you read the grapevines about the steps and 12 and 12 over again and some other literature, and you really learn a great deal about them. And it's been a real learning process for me, and has helped me a great deal. I don't know what effect it's had on you. I hope it's beneficial. If not, too bad. We've been keeping attendance. I want to let you know some of you have missed some of these, but don't worry. 12th step. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And if you look through the big book, you'll notice that for the most part, steps 3 through 11 are dealt with in 2 chapters, and that's all. Not that that's not significant, but Bill devoted 2 chapters to those 7 or 8 steps. There are 5 chapters that really deal with the 12th step. Working with others, to wives, family afterwards, to employers, and a vision for you. And they all add something to this 12th step. The first part of the 12th step, and I don't really like to break it into parts because it is one step, and I think really the crux of it is to live this life that we've been given as a gift. But the first part of it talks about a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. It isn't a result of these steps, it is the result of these steps. And just, you know, what is a spiritual awakening? The big book describes it as a profound alteration in our reaction to life. That sounds good, you know, I'll accept that. Some people discuss it as a change in personality. I think that's easier to understand, or at least it was for me. Character has been defined as my reaction to life. And anything that alters that reaction to life alters my character. And to be honest with you, when I first came into AA, I didn't know what the hell character was. I mean, I saw it was in the steps. You people had this language that you use, character and shortcomings and humbly and all that nonsense. And that was a lexicon that was all to yourselves. It certainly wasn't anything that was familiar to me. And character was not familiar to me. But I think that as a result of, you know, saying in the first step that the only way I can find out about my drinking is to stop drinking. You know, if you want to find out about something, you usually do a lot of it, and then you find out about it. Well, if you do a lot of drinking, you're not going to find out anything about your drinking. And the first step says, stop it, you know, and admit you're powerless and surrender. Okay, you can do that. And then you have to say that I have no power to stay away from this drink. I've tried that before. And the second step says you can get that power in here. It's in these rooms. And the third step says that I want to make a decision to turn my thinking and my behavior over to a power, over to God as I understand Him. And that's a big, big decision, to turn my thinking and my behavior over to God as I understand Him. And that's all part of the process. And then we do that inventory, you know, that one that makes us feel uncomfortable and embarrassed and ashamed. And then we come to that fifth step that says, stop the isolation. You can't live in isolation anymore. You got to share this nonsense with somebody else. You got to share it with your sponsor or a clergyman or a minister or a rabbi. You have to share it. You have to get out of yourself. And we do that in the fifth step. And then we identify these character defects, and we're ready to get rid of them, and we're ready to have others replace them. We're ready to have some understanding in our lives and tolerance in our lives and honesty in our lives. And we're ready to do that in the sixth step. And it doesn't all happen at once, and we know it's a process. And then that process really begins in the seventh step, where we ask Him to humbly remove those things. And then we drew up that list in the eighth step, people that we had harmed. And we found that it was really people that are close to us for the most part, that we had harmed, our wives, our husbands, our children. Children especially, I don't think I will ever get over that. And then we make direct amends to those people. That's a tough order sometimes, you know. But how much freedom do you want? You have to ask yourself, how much freedom do you want? Do you want to make those direct amends? Do you want to go to that person and say, this is how I believe I have offended you? How do you feel I've offended you? And what can I do to set the record straight? You know, tough thing to do. You don't always get the result that you want, but it's for you. And the 10th step, we continue to take that personal inventory, you know. And when we're wrong, promptly admit it. Don't go through the day with it hanging on you. Just promptly admit it. I'm wrong. I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have gone to that meeting. I shouldn't have. Things I should have said. I should not have been dishonest with somebody. And the 11th step, we found out that, you know, God runs this world, and we really have little effect on how He runs it. And we saw through what we felt was prayer and meditation and how that could help us to understand His will for us and give us the power to carry that out. And that changed us. And then we finally come to step 12, and there has been a change in our character, our personality, how we handle life, how we go through life, how we deal with people, how we deal with the relationships we have in life. Because life is relationships. That's what it is. Relationships with your family, romantic relationships. Life is relationships. Where you work, who you live with, all those things. And those things have been changed. We handle things differently. And hopefully we've had some effect on our family and the people we live with, or the people we work with, and the people we come in contact with. And I think that's what this spiritual awakening is for me. It's this whole business of the steps 1 through 11 that have changed me, and sometimes with some pain, and but always moving ahead. Always, you know, don't stop. And then we come to the second part of the 12th step. Try to carry this message to alcoholics. The step is very specific. It says to carry this message, not your message. This message that's contained in this book. And that's the message that we should carry. Not all the gripes and resentments that we have and some peculiar philosophy that we may have or some religion that we may have, but this message that's in that book, that's the message that we have to carry. And those chapters that I spoke about, working with others, I think are great chapters to carry this, what we familiarly call 12-step work. Working with others has some downright basic principles on how we can become a sponsor, how we do it. The first thing you notice in the chapter Working with Others is that there are some promises in the 12th step. Promises just as there are after the 9th step. There are some 12-step promises. It says here, life will take on new meaning. Hasn't life taken on new meaning for all of us because we're in this fellowship? I mean, we have a purpose. We know where we're going. We know what we have to do. We know how to conduct ourselves. We know that we have to be a good AA member. That's a new meaning to life. I never had that kind of a meaning to life. It says to watch people recover and see them help others. That's a promise that we're going to have. You're going to watch people recover, and you can see those people turn around and help others. My experience with this, and I don't know if it's the experience with other people, but I've been around a while, and the young guys that I sponsor, when they get a few years under their belt, they're hard-ass like you can't believe. I mean, I don't know where they got this stuff from. This is the policy of this group, bang, 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 bang. Jeez, I don't know. You know, I was a softie when I was sponsoring them, but they are different. They are different. And so, but it's a great thing, that promise that this 12-step is, you can watch them recover and watch them help others. And it's really a joy. Sometimes, I have to go up and quiet them down, For example, I have to tell some of these guys I sponsor when they take on their own pigeons, I say, listen, you do not have to be single and unemployed to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. The way the demands that they put on the time of some of the people that come in is incredible. But, it's good to see, I can assure you. You will watch loneliness vanish. Isn't that so, huh? I don't know, I was lonely a lot, I think, when I was drinking. I was the only, the bartender may have been the only guy that was talking to me at some point in my drinking. And I never really considered him a great friend. But you have this fellowship grows up around you. I've been involved in 3 or 4 groups since I've been, and anybody that says that the growth of AA is dependent upon love, that's nonsense, right? We know that the growth of AA are resentments. That's how AA grows. Resentments and a coffee pot. That's all you need. And you got another group. So don't ever have anybody tell you that love spreads AA. No. Resentment spreads AA. But one of the promises here is you will see a fellowship grow up around you. And that's so true, isn't it? I mean, in our own group, we see a fellowship, people grow up around us, and we have a host of friends. That's another promise for the 12th step. And, as I've said before, I can count on one hand the friends of mine that are not in AA. Every time I see somebody and say hello to somebody, whoever I'm with says, I know where you know him from, I know where you know him from, So if you ever say hello to me, you are disclosing your anonymity. So just be aware of that. So working with others tells us, find out as much as you can about the newcomer. Find out his likes, his dislikes, what his problems have been. Talk to his wife if you can. That's usually the person that you live with, I always get a kick out of people who come in new. I think working with newcomers is that's the greatest gift that we have. Tell me about your drinking. Well, I don't do this and I don't do that, and I don't, by the time he's finished, you wonder what he's doing in the room. And I said, suppose I asked your wife. Oh, he says. Well, that's different. Well, what would she say? Well, she would say I drink too much. Oh. So obviously that's the one that you talk to. I used to make it a habit of taking the guy home after he came to a meeting. Take him to his house and ask the wife to come down, or if and just sit and talk to her and tell her that, you're going to see the back of this guy's head for the next 90 days going out the door. And explain that beer counts, because you'd be surprised how Keegan says that beer doesn't count, so beer counts, wine counts. I'll never forget, we had a guy once who said, I had a dinner party and I had a glass of wine. I said, well, you got a new sobriety date. Oh, no, no, no. You don't understand. This wasn't a drink. It was just there and I drank. I know. Well, I mean, he was furious. Luckily, it was within the same month, so he kept his sobriety date. He now has about 23 years, so he's fine. But find out as much as you can about the guy. And don't force yourself on him, you know? We can't chase people. That's one thing. I think we can approach people. I do that all the time. I do a lot with lawyers. Terrible bunch to try and get sober. Next to priests, they're worse. I called this guy up this morning, and you ever try and call a guy up cold and tell him he's got a drinking problem? You ought to try it someday. It's fun. So I introduced myself. Yes, and who are you? And I say, well, I'm with the Lawyers Assistance Program. And just what do they do? I said, well, let me just tell you why I'm calling. I said, there's a few people around town who are very concerned about your drinking, and they want to know if you care to do something about it, I'll be there to help you. Well, nobody has ever leaped through the phone and said, where can I meet you? I want to, that has never happened. And I always make that call in the morning. I never make it in the afternoon. Okay? Very bad in the afternoon. But I tell you this much. Everyone that I've called has taken my name and telephone number because they look at you as the lifeline. If you let them know that you're in AA, they look at you as the lifeline. They know they can always go to you and perhaps save themselves. This guy took my phone number, took my name. I don't know if I'll hear from him, but it's out there. So I think we can approach people. I don't think that's a problem. But we don't chase them. Hey, because we can spoil them, you know? The book tells us don't chase them. Give them the book to read. See if they want to go ahead with this program. This is not it's a simple program, but it's not an easy program. But it's so simple, though, isn't it, huh? One drink, one day, one power, as you understand them. But that's what the program is all about. It's not complex. It's one drink, one day, and one power, as you understand them. And the nice thing about AA is that nobody's higher power is any higher than anyone else's higher power, you know? Everybody's higher power is equal. And it's a simple, simple program. And the Working with Others chapter is just a lot of good common sense. See your man alone. If he's satisfied, if you're satisfied that he's an alcoholic, tell him about the hopelessness of this disease. And I think that's really our obligation. I don't think anybody should leave an AA meeting without being told that this is a fatal illness and it's progressive. If you just tell him that as he's going out the door, just has to be told that. It's fatal and it's progressive. Nobody recovers from it unless they come into AA. It just doesn't happen. And it's a 100% fatal. You either get locked up in custody or you die. And I think you have to tell them that. That's the message that Bill brought to Dr. Bob. That's the message he got from Silkworth at the town's hospital. If he ever drinks again, Lois, don't call me, call the undertaker. Bill overheard that. He wasn't supposed to hear that. But that's what he brought out to Dr. Bob. And I think that's the message that we have to make sure everybody hears when they come into an AA meeting. Says really don't be afraid to talk about the spiritual program that we have. I don't think we should. Maybe you shouldn't lean on it so much in the beginning, but I don't really think it matters, because sooner or later he's going to have to approach it. He's going to have to live his life on a spiritual basis if he's going to have this program in his life. And, we've all had successes and we've all had our failures in 12-step work. We don't get so much going to the house as we used to. When I first came in, we did a lot of going to people's houses. That was always a lot of fun, you know. Are you here for him? Yes. He's inside. How are you? Oh, I'm fine. You want to go out? You mean go out? Yes, I'll go out. You know, take him out to a meeting. And I think you have to take him to a meeting. I think that's so important. Once my sponsor one time 12-stepped a very heavy-duty Monsignor locally, and the guy got drunk and died. But he would go over to the Monsignor's rectory and, you know, give him a meeting in the rectory, treat him special because he was a Monsignor, you know. And I think if we have a broken leg, no matter who you are, doctors treat the broken leg the same way. And if we have alcoholism, it's got to be treated the same way, regardless of who you're 12-stepping, you know. The Monsignor should have been brought to an AA meeting and sat down and told to listen. He could, you know, dress in mufti if he wished, but he should have been brought to a meeting. I accuse my sponsor of killing the Monsignor, as you might suspect. And I never let him forget it. But I don't think we can make any difference as to how we treat people in AA. And if he wants to go his merry way, you let him go his merry way. But people come back, you know. I had a lawyer in my office yesterday, 40-year-old lawyer. And he, you know, I got him to a group in Rockland County, and he decided to make the noble experiment. And he was in my office crying yesterday morning. So they come back, you know. Where else is there to go? Tell me where else you can go with this disease. You cannot go anywhere than where we are. We're in the right place. Chapter 2, Wives, gives us some important things about sponsorship. One of the things it says in the Chapter 2, Wives, which incidentally was not written by Lois, was written by Bill, never be angry. That's a good example for sponsorship. We never accomplish anything by being angry with a pigeon. Never. Never be angry. And the chapter says, never tell him what he must do about his drinking. Don't ask him to do it for anyone else but himself. And if need be, tell him your story. That's really what happens, huh? There's a pamphlet out, short pamphlet, and I wish I could get a hold of it, but I looked for it and I couldn't find it. But in essence, it says that we have been given this gift that no one else has. Nobody can talk to an alcoholic like one drunk talking to another. Nobody. I don't care who you are, counselor, nobody. I don't care what your training is. If you're not a drunk, you don't meet muster. You got to be a drunk to do this work. And it says that when God chose the people to help others recover from this disease, he didn't choose the scientists, and he didn't choose the doctors, and he didn't choose the psychologists. He chose us to help people recover from this disease. And so this is a great gift that we have. And one drunk talking to another is what it's all about. And we should never forget that gift that was given to us. And you know, I don't know what happens to people that don't come to meetings. I really don't. But I heard a guy in Texas one time say, I don't know what happens to people that don't come to meetings, but they ain't dead yet. So I don't know. Not that he was wishing him any ill, but I don't know what happens to people that don't come to meetings. But you certainly can't practice the 12-step unless you come to meetings. You can't practice it on the phone. You can't practice it watching TV. You can't practice it at the baseball game. You can only practice it at a meeting. So if you're going to do this program, you must come to the meetings to do the program, because this is the only place you can practice it. The family afterward is another chapter on the 12-step. It tells you as a sponsor, you know, not to expect too much. Try and instill with him that the painful past is the best asset he has. We stick to our own stories, it tells us in the family afterward. And it makes mention that alcoholics are sensitive people. I wonder where they got that from. Huh? Oh, God. Certainly not anyone here. And the guy, and your prospect has got to realize that he owes more than he is getting. He's was the head of the house, and he's mainly to blame for the problems he has. And the spiritual life includes family obligations. And one of the things we've got to tell the newcomer is that we absolutely insist on enjoying life. Talks about health. You know, we had a guy in a group meeting last night. He certainly looked like he could use a detox, and that was mentioned to him, but he didn't want to go. So, but I mean, I don't think we can overlook doctors. You know, as doctors, probably most of them don't understand much about alcoholism. Tells us there to tell them that the use of sweets is helpful. A box of chocolates around the house is a good idea, and don't worry about the weight. You know, just get sober. Not everybody can handle chocolates. The chapter to the employer tells us how to 12-step an employee or a co-worker. You know, this all has to do with the 12-step, and that no man should be fired simply because he's an alcoholic without being given an opportunity to recover. Give him the opportunity. I must confess that as an AA member, I had very little patience with a person working for me who is an alcoholic and doesn't recover. Very little patience. Gave him an opportunity and gave him another opportunity, and that was the end. He was gone. And I think that's what the book tells me to do. You know, if he doesn't want to get sober, you better discharge him and get on with it and get on with your life. And he eventually died, but there was nothing I could do for him. It also says that I saw this the other night, and I got a kick out of it. He said, we're talking here about alcoholics in this chapter to the employer. And we're not talking about the habitual drinker or the whoopee drinker. I always like that, whoopee drinker. And I don't know quite what a whoopee drinker is, but I suppose it's a guy who gets drunk at his daughter's wedding or something like that. But the habitual drinker, this is not a bad habit. Huh? We are not dealing with a bad habit. I think 95% of the people outside think that drinking is a bad habit. You know, how often have they said to you, why don't you cut down, right? Why don't you stop? Why do you have to drink today? You know, it's a habit. Stop the habit. Well, it's not a habit. It's a disease. And it's a altogether different proposition than a habit. And so the chapter here to the employers makes the distinction. It's not a habit. We are sick, deranged people. Maybe somebody doesn't like that term, but that's what we are. I mean, anybody that pulled the stunts I pulled after drinking has got to be deranged. I mean, you don't know how you got the car home and you're drinking at lunchtime the next day? Come on. You got to be deranged to do something like that. But that was it. You know, the whoopee drinker, he probably wouldn't look at a bottle for 6 months. But not me, boy. I'm out drinking at some place, and the next thing I remember, I'm shaving, you know? It's morning. And I'm saying, what happened to the time? And, you know, then I want to, I'm at the bar at 11:45. Let me have some of that stuff that you gave me last night. It was terrific, you know? Really terrific. That's a deranged person. I wouldn't say that at the time, but clearly it is. So that's what the employers, and vision for you is another chapter on the 12-step. I always liked that because we all thought this, you know, in the first part of the vision for you, It says, what happens when your prospect says to you, as we all did, am I going to be consigned to a life that is stupid, boring, and glum? Right? Didn't we all think that? No more action. Stupid, boring, and glum. Of course, the definition of boring is lack of terror. Yeah. If you want a life that has no terror involved in it, then you're going to have that life. You'll have that life. No terror. We can promise you three things. You'll never go to jail, you never take another drink, and you have a happy life. That's what we can promise you here in AA. Can't promise you that anywhere else. We can promise you that here in AA. And if that's boring to you, then you can always have the terror. Do all I have a sufficient substitute? Well, I certainly think the work that we do in AA is a sufficient substitute. And then Bill gives us a glimpse of the future, of what's in store for us. And he tells us the story of Bill and Bob again, how they got together. And of course, that's a remarkable story when you consider it just for a moment. I mean, here's a guy that left his wife in New York, was broke at this hotel in Akron, Ohio. And I always kind of think Akron, Ohio is like Bethlehem or something. You know, it's small, you know, really, it's a small town. You know, would you ever go on a vacation to Akron, Ohio? I don't think so. No. But here he is, and he stays with Dr. Bob, a kind of a down-and-out proctologist, and they study the Bible for 3 months, and they read the King. You know, they get this program together, and they go and they talk to alcoholic number 3, Bill Dodson. Huh? And if you're ever afraid of calling someone an alcoholic, read Bill Dodson's story. Alcoholic number 3. They called him an alcoholic. He said, we're here to treat you for alcoholism. They told him right up front. First guy they got. We're here to treat you for alcoholism. You don't treat somebody for alcoholism unless they're an alcoholic. So it's there. It's right in the book. And it's, I have a friend of mine who sat down and had coffee with Bill Wilson some years ago. This is that same guy from Canada. And he's been in the program since 1960, and he was a delegate, I guess, in the middle 60s. And he ran into Wilson in Grand Central Station, and he said to him, he said, there's a lot more to the story, but to make it short, he said to him, would you want to have a cup of coffee with me? So they went to the Oyster Bar, and they had coffee together, and they spent many hours. It just went by, as he describes it. And in it, at one point in time, Wilson said that he had had a vision of what Alcoholics Anonymous was. Every member of AA, in the future and in the past. Everybody that had ever been to AA. Bill Wilson had this vision. Just millions and millions of people. He had this vision. And this guy kept quiet about that story for years, till after Wilson died, you know. Then he decided that he mentioned it one time, and he's been urged to tell it. But that was a vision that Wilson had, and the title of this chapter is A Vision for You. What's in store for you? Wilson was able to see what was in store for AA, and he tells us in this chapter what's in store for us. And all we need, he says in this chapter, to duplicate what we have accomplished is only a matter of willingness, patience, and labor. Got to work at it. Nobody's going to give it to you. Got to work at it. Got to come to the meetings. Some will sink and never get up, but more than half will become fellows. That's not a bad rating. More than half, if you want it. And then we come to practice these principles in all our affairs. And I think this is really the main part of the step. Although we concentrate on working with newcomers, let me just say that a lot of people, because of the rehabs, they don't get called to the house anymore. And so people show up at meetings, so that's where you have to be at meetings. And meetings, the 12-step work for meetings is setting the place up. You know, the fact that Sponsor House is here is a great 12-step message. the people who set it up. It's a great 12-step work. Being at the meeting is a 12-step work. Sharing at the meeting is 12-step work. Shaking hands with a newcomer, that you notice them. You remember the first time some old-timer noticed you? How good you felt? Jesus, he recognized me. I'm a person. It's so important that you shake their hand. What's going on in your life? How you feel? Just to share it. That's great 12-step work. Make a person feel part of the group. Tell them to make coffee. I remember when I was in a Chappaqua group, I was elected to make the coffee. I thought that was an honor. An honor to be elected to make the coffee. I was proud of it. I was part of the group. They recognized me. It was great. It wasn't a chore. I look forward to it. And I think that's all 12-step work. Going out, speaking, taking commitments. I think going to I may say a word about this because it's really so important to me. And the members of my group know it's important to me. They have exchange meetings. Westchester has an exchange meeting and New York City has an exchange meeting. And you go down and it's like a Chinese air raid drill. I don't mean to demean any Chinese that are maybe here, but it's like it's several hundred people exchanging meetings, making commitments for 3 months. I'll go to your place. You'll come to Brooklyn. I'll come to Mount Kisco. Literally thousands of meetings are exchanged inside of an hour and a half or 2 hours. I mean, it's an act of love that you have to be present for to experience. It is AA in action, an exchange meeting, whether it's in Westchester or whether it's down there. It was just wonderful. And that's great 12-step work. And to go on the commitments and speak and meet other people and ride in the car with newcomers. That's all great 12-step work. Practice the principles in all our affairs. And I think what it means is you got to be the same kind of person in an AA meeting at home and on the job and where you socialize. We're all terrific in here. We all love each other. We're all terrific. You never met a bad person at an AA meeting, right? I mean, it's just great. You want to ride? I'll take you home. Don't worry about it. It's the same thing when I was drinking. No, his money's no good. No, take my money. Such nonsense. And your son asks you for 50 cents for, get out of here. What do you think? I made of money? So I mean, we got to stop that. You have to stop that. You have to be the same person. Don't wear two hats. Don't wear a hat in here and wear a different hat outside. Practice these principles in all our affairs, and that's all is no mistake. And so when we're on the job and we have to be honest with the people that we work with, be honest with them. With the family, be honest. We have received some great principles in this program. Honesty, courage, love, patience. I think patience is one of the things that we really have to learn, because we have to be patient with this program, because the program is a process. And as alcoholics, we are very impatient. The reason we drink, because it works so quick. You want to feel good, drink some whiskey. You feel good right away. You don't have to wait. Bang. Where are you? Let me go. But so we're not used to patience. But we come in here, we know we have to be patient. This program has to sink in. We have to work it. We have to go to maybe 150 fourth-step meetings to understand what they're getting at. So it's patience that we learn, and patience with our loved ones, Patience with those who work with us, patience with those that we sponsor. Patience. That's such a great principle that we should have. Tolerance. Do you ever sit around an AA room at 2 minutes after 10? What the hell is this guy talking about, for Christ's sakes? Hey, doesn't he understand what time it is here, for crying out loud? You couldn't get us out of the saloon if you burned it. But somebody speaks overtime and the tolerance goes right out the window. We have no tolerance. Well, you got to have that. That's a principle that we learn in here, tolerance. And we have to be tolerant of other drivers. Those are miracles I'm asking for. I understand that. But I mean, I think tolerance is so important. Understanding that principle. I never tried to understand anybody. To be able to understand why other people act the way they do is, there's a direct relationship to your serenity and the power to understand. Direct relationship. The more you can understand, the more serene you are. The less you understand, the less serene you are. And understanding is a great principle that we learn about in this program. Forgiveness. That's one that we're not too good at. We talk about it all the time in the Lord's Prayer, don't we? Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those. To the same extent that we forgive those who trespass against us, forgive us. Well, then that puts a great burden on us, doesn't it? Because we must begin that forgiveness in order to be forgiven. And forgiveness is a great spiritual principle. Forgiveness is tough sometimes. You know, I've talked about the Susan Smith case an awful lot, and I was talking to my wife last night about her husband David. There will someday he'll have to come to forgiveness for her if he's going to get on with his life. It's going to be very difficult for him. But that's the kind of forgiveness that we talk about in here. That type of forgiveness. That's so important to we want to live a joyous life. And these principles are very necessary for a joyous life. One of the great principles is mind my own business. That's something I learned. I could never. That's, you know, when I was drinking, that was one of the things I could never do, mind my own business. I have two front teeth that are not my own, and I have a nose that's a little crooked as a result of not being able to mind my own business. But I think that's you know, if it's, you know, that also goes with sponsorship. We are sponsors to help people to reach recovery. That's another thing. We do not have a legacy of sobriety. We have a legacy of recovery. And that's what this is about. The drinking is just to get you in here. You don't drink out. Drinking just to get you in here. So sobriety is not the legacy. The legacy is recovery. So, and sometimes as sponsors, we think that we're psychologists and marriage counselors. We're not. We're not. We're here to carry this message in this book. And if we overstep those bounds, we're really going to get in a lot of trouble. That's not my go to therapy, you know. Go to therapy. I don't think there's anything wrong with sending somebody to therapy they want. And so we just got to stay out of things that are not our business. So minding my own business is, and there are many, many other principles, you know, that have to be applied that we learn in here. I think, you know, to get angry is something that we really, really have to watch. I've seen more people. I stopped a guy the other night. He was going out the door. I said, "What's the matter with you?" "Well, I didn't show up at a meeting, and they're on my back, and he's carrying on. He's ready to explode because he didn't show up for a commitment, and the people that were on the commitment said, 'Where the hell were you?' You know." I said, "What do you expect him to say?" You know? Well, you know. And he finally had to realize that we're blowing it out of proportion. You know, we can do that, can't we? AA people. Can we blow things out of proportion? I always liked Phil's story with the guy with the cheap bottle of wine that ran across the street, you know. He almost gets hit by a car and killed for running after a guy with a bottle of wine. We can blow those things out of proportion. And we have to be very careful of anger. Very, very careful of anger. Angry people get drunk. We block out the sunlight of the spirit, and angry people get drunk. And they say in the 12 and 12, if you live by these principles, has a great last line in here that true ambition is the deep desire to live usefully and to walk humbly under the grace of God. And You know, I think that's what these principles will bring to us. Now, I asked Mary Ann if she had questions, and she said no, and then she wrote up these questions at the last minute just to make this. Can I have a spiritual awakening without doing these steps? I think you can have a spiritual awakening if you're a non-alcoholic without doing these steps, but if you're alcoholic, I think you have to do these steps. And that's what the purpose of the steps for. That is the result. The principles I have described to you, if I just do 1 and 12, can I help a newcomer? You know, it's a funny thing about a newcomer. I think anybody with more time than the guy who walks in can help him. I'll never forget, I was in about, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, and I wanted to sober up the world. You know how it is. Everybody should be in this program. Look how happy everybody is. Don't you feel that way? I mean, you really do. I mean, God, everybody in here is so happy, even though it's hot and all this other nonsense. I mean, we're really feeling good, and everybody should be in here. So I thought my boss should be in. He wasn't my boss at the time. He was my ex-boss. And if I get up, I guess I must have had more than 3 months. And I bring him in, and I'm waiting for somebody to take him off my hands, you know? Hey, I used to work for this guy, and I think he has a drinking problem. Yeah. Good, Jack. A lot of luck with him. Me? Yes, you. But I don't advocate two-stepping, and a lot of people do it. You know, they don't want to do those steps in between. And don't you often hear at a 4-step meeting, that's when the crowd starts to break down. Oh, it just seems to come to a drop-off. Everybody does 1 through 3, and then 4th, I'm working on it, you know. So, okay. I have a little, I found this in rummaging through stuff that I have, and I thought it was kind of interesting. It's called the 23rd Psalm for Alcoholics, and I think I'll close with it. The Lord is my sponsor, I shall not want. He maketh me to go to many meetings. He leadeth me to sit back, relax, and listen with an open mind. He restoreth my soul, my sanity, and my health. He leadeth one in the path of sobriety, serenity, and fellowship for mine own sake. He teaches me to think, to take it easy, to live and to let live, and do first things first. He maketh me honest, humble, and grateful. He teaches me to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things that I can, and giveth me the wisdom to know the difference. Yea, though I walk through the valley of despair, frustration, guilt, and remorse, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy program, thy way of life, thy 12 steps, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Rationalization, fear, anxiety, self-pity, and resentment. Thou anointest my confused mind and jangled nerves with knowledge, understanding, and hope. No longer am I alone, neither am I afraid, nor sick, nor helpless, nor hopeless. My cup runneth over. Surely sobriety and serenity shall follow me every day of my life, 24 hours at a time. As I surrender my will to thine and carry thy message to others, and I will dwell in the house of my higher power as I understand him, daily, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.